Hi, we're Nia and Mary-Anne from Seren Health Coaching. We are metabolic health coaches who are passionate about good metabolic health for everyone. We also love to chat about all things health and to share as much information as we can with people who want to make changes to their lifestyle but aren't quite sure where to start. We're going to release a new episode every Friday where we talk about a different aspect of health. So do subscribe and let us know what you think. We'd also love to know what you're interested in too. So if there's something that you'd like us to have a chat about, do send us a message and we'll do our best to cover it soon. Hello. I'm in the wrong document. Hang on.
Oh, it helps to be in the right document.
Doesn't it just?
Because I want to talk about,
What do you want to talk about?
the third bit of this trilogy, as I call it. So we talked
Oh, it's
about,
got a bit
yeah.
Lord of the
Well, I've
Rings.
always fancied being an author. So we talked about the idea of readiness for change, that some people fail to change things because they're not actually ready. And then we talked about starting every Monday thing,
Oh
so
yeah,
I'll start
yeah.
it next Monday. And I use that often because, to be honest, I do that quite often. So I can write it off my books if I'm starting something next Monday. And then if I have to do it the next Monday, I can again write it off my book. So the Monday thing is, I suspect, very common way of
Yeah.
putting it off another week. Okay. So the third bit of this was just the idea of procrastination. It's a great word, isn't it? I don't know where it
Mm.
comes from actually, but anyway, it sounds Greek. Procrastination, what is it? And do some of us do it more? Because I think lots of us think we do,
Mm.
and we think it's just part of who we are, but I suspect it's more complex than that.
Mm.
Um, and are some of us less likely than others to do it? And if so, why? And what can we do about it?
Mm.
Um, would you say you're a procrastinator, Nia? My experience of working with you is you're not. And as you probably know, I'm a maddening procrastinator.
Mm.
So, what's your take on that?
I am a sort of a procrastinator.
Are you now?
I'm a topic specific procrastinator. Can you be one
Okay.
of those?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
not
that's
yeah,
fair.
not with work.
Not with
Um,
work. So anything under the work column, you don't
Gets
procrastinate.
done. Yeah, pretty
That's
much.
really interesting. So you've got a very strong work ethic.
I've a really yeah, and it's annoying actually. And that
Yeah, it's
I and it doesn't it translates to anything that I believe comes under the work
yes,
umbrella.
yes.
So it's actual work.
Yeah,
Um, Anything to do with volunteering that I do
right. Is
is a
also
work.
work. Yeah.
And so is life admin. So if you
Well, this
need
is a
me,
huge plus for people like me to see someone who can see life admin as work.
yeah. So if you need me to
Yeah,
reinsure you or
yeah. You would
sort
do
out your
it.
car tax,
Yeah,
it gets done. And
yeah.
I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but
No,
it gets done pretty much immediately.
you are very good at it. I know that. But why am I
But
not?
I am not good at some other things. So I am a maddening procrastinator when it comes to putting away the clean washing.
Right.
I am
Are you
one of those.
not interested in it, or it doesn't satisfy you?
I have to be in the mood.
Yeah, okay.
So I can
See,
put
I'm good at
on
that.
yeah, I can put on a great podcast and then I'm happy.
Okay.
And I almost use it as this is ridiculous, but if I can use it as some me time because I can shut the door
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
my
yeah.
bedroom
Oh,
and
I
I
know
can put
lots
the
of women who iron and do washing stuff for me time.
yep,
It is a sad fact, I
sad
think.
fact. Yes. So
Yeah.
I'm very yeah, I'm incredibly good at procrastinating that and housework because it doesn't interest me in the slightest. I do
Okay.
like a really clean home, but I never seem to manage it, and maybe
Okay.
that's
Well,
because I
it's just not a
procrastinate.
priority. That's the thing. Yeah.
But yeah, so
Okay.
yes, that's the kind of thing I procrastinate about. Um, and no, everything else I think I'm pretty good at doing very, very efficiently and immediately. Um, yeah. And I
Okay.
suppose the only thing in work kind of mode that I would procrastinate
Okay.
is if I am not sure about something.
Okay.
So I will put something off if
Yes.
I I don't immediately know how I'm going to do
Okay.
it.
So we'll come to that a bit later, and that's interesting reason for some people's procrastination
Mm.
is to do with only doing tasks well and therefore putting off something that you think you're not going to do well or is more of a,
Perfectionism.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
we'll come
oh,
to
who
that.
knew? Who knew I was a perfectionist? I mean,
Yes. Well,
Anyway.
and that's the interesting thing, that are there innate parts of your personality, and that's the question, that you are given,
Mm,
or are there so many other factors at work it's very hard to tease out?
mm.
So let's start with the definition. I
Yeah. Do
looked at
you
the
have one?
definitions. A lot of them ramble on, but I like this. So procrastination is the act of unnecessarily delaying or postponing something despite knowing there could be negative consequences for doing so. It's very
Mm,
simple. So my
mm.
car tax, I tax on the day towards
No.
midnight. Yes.
No.
Yes. Because I don't want them having my money before that out of my account.
Oh my goodness.
Sometimes I get it wrong and the MOTs run out. You don't want to know. But anyway,
Oh my goodness. That
yes.
literally gives me the heebie-jeebies,
Yes.
Marianne. Like my stomach is hurting now.
I love it. Aren't we so incredibly different?
I
Okay.
mean, I love that we're so different, but
Yeah.
wowzers.
So, um, yeah, we've talked about the Monday thing and ticking the box, but the tax thing's another little illustration. I can only
Oh,
do the tax when it's actually due. The same with my income tax assessment and all that. I'm
oh
doing
my
it at
goodness.
before midnight on that day. Um, but I'm sure I'm not the only one out there.
Oh, I'm sure you're not.
So why am I more of a procrastinator than you? I like the way you divide yours into to work being different. I suspect that comes from your incredibly hardworking genetic background,
Yeah,
and
maybe.
that you've that work ethic is very strong,
Well,
almost
I've
in a
always
cultural
said that I'm not
sense.
actually very clever. I just work hard.
Oh, I'm clever and I just do no work. Oh my goodness, that's a whole nother podcast. Not true. Um, anyway,
So are we sort of genetically then
yes,
innately
yes,
more one or the other?
okay,
Interesting. And I
yeah,
think maybe we have personality traits that I mean, we obviously have personality traits.
yes,
But what it's to do with the environment that we live in
yes,
that actually makes the difference.
yes. So that old saying, isn't it? That the environment pulls the trigger. It's a bit like the genetics thing. So you've got the
Yeah.
genetics, but the environment pulls the trigger. I really like that. So maybe procrastination is a bit more than laziness. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, I don't think it's laziness actually.
Okay.
I think that definitely it's not. I think there's a fear associated with doing something which
Yes.
makes you procrastinate.
Yes.
And then that kind of gets into your head. Often as well that there are some things that you can do that are just more exciting, more gratifying, maybe give you
Yes. So
that
this is the
dopamine
bit
hit.
that I really relate to. Okay.
Yeah. And then the
Okay.
things that you need to take longer over are
Yes.
obviously much less attractive because
Yes.
you've got to put more effort in. And it's not laziness, it's just having the mental headspace sometimes to
Yeah.
do that thing. I think that's
It's
interesting.
also that marshmallow thing, isn't it? Where they were trying to prove that some people have innate personality traits that make them more likely to be able to wait for
Wait for
gratification. And
yeah.
actually we sort of disproved it, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Um, but I really get that I think I like that chimp idea. I reckon I've got a chimp, and my chimp's different to your chimp.
Oh yeah.
So we got to handle our chimps. But I sort of feel like my chimp's very, very easily bored, and
Mm,
it needs a lot of entertaining. And I always think you're more disciplined than me because you're so much better at looking at that, at taking that longer view. And I love it when you make a list and just tick it off. I'm so in awe
mm,
because lists don't actually work for me. I can make lists endlessly,
mm,
um, and I'm just overwhelmed by the list. I can't even do the list, and
mm,
then I find them really demotivating. And I also find that some things on my list are still there 3 months later
mm.
because I wanted to, I don't know, do something, and it's just not
Not
it's not
happened.
it's not entertained my chimp enough, and so
Mm,
it's put off. So I think your chimp is just so much better than mine in some ways. In
In
some
some ways, well,
ways.
remember,
Okay.
because my chimp is not a great one either, actually. But I often also wonder whether it's environmental. So you and I are both married, and we
Yes.
have different
Yeah.
spouses. So
Yeah.
I have always taken responsibility for the life admin in our house.
Yes.
Okay, um, and
Mm.
my husband often says to me that if I drop dead tomorrow, he's going to die
Yeah,
too
he
because
he
he has
won't
no
be able
idea.
to work it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that's obviously not true. He's an intelligent
Yeah,
man,
no,
and
of
if he had
course.
to, he could do it.
Yeah.
But the point is,
Yeah,
he's
I get
never
it.
had to,
Yeah.
and I've always taken that on. And in the same kind of way, you've got your husband who does a lot of those kind of
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Now he does. He didn't used
Yeah.
to, but yes, agreed. So,
Does that also have an
I
impact
hate
on?
life admin. I loathe it. I'd rather die than do life admin, but I used it because we had to insure the house or whatever it
Yeah.
was. We did have a broker, by the way, for insurance. It makes it an awful lot
Yeah.
easier. Yes.
But
Um,
it's interesting, isn't it? Okay.
yes, so it seems fairly obvious, doesn't it, that
Mm. And then let's talk about your chimp, because your chimp,
yes,
as you said, needs endless entertaining, which
yes.
he probably does.
I like
But
him, by the
you
way, but yeah.
are incredibly productive
Yeah.
when you are passionate about something. So if
Yes.
I can find you a topic that you really
Yes.
want to write
I'm
about,
off.
you're off. But
Yeah.
if I say, Marianne, I think we should do something on
Yeah.
something, and you're like,
I
Nia, I really
drag
hate that. It's
my feet.
boring.
Yes, I
Um,
drag my feet.
then you just
Okay.
don't do it.
Which seems fairly obvious, isn't it? Any
Mm.
sort of tedium slows me right down. But what I'm interested in is why you manage to handle that. I mean, you also have the tedium thing, but you somehow manage to handle it better. Um,
Mm.
yeah, so
I
that
think I do that with a actually, interestingly, with I dangle myself a little carrot.
do you?
Mm.
Okay. Okay. So
So I've
an
always done this.
external reward?
Well, yeah. So
Okay.
so always like with revision, because let's face it, nobody sits down. I mean, unless you're incredibly interested in
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
I'll let you into a little secret. Not many people who study pharmacy are incredibly into medicinal chemistry. Shh,
No.
don't tell
No, I
anyone.
can imagine.
But
Yeah.
it's boring. It's
Yeah.
really
Yeah. But you
boring.
just got to do it.
You've just got to do it, and
Yeah.
you've just got to discipline yourself to
Yeah.
do it. So when it came to revision, when it comes to doing
Yes.
stuff you don't want to do, I used to say, you do 30 minutes of this, then you can go for a nice
Okay.
walk
So
by the
you
sea.
even you, that's interesting. Use external, um, sort of, what do you call them? Uh,
Rewards, really.
yeah,
Yeah.
rewards. And I
Yeah.
always think it's only me.
No, but for things you really, really, really don't want to do,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think
So
that
there
does
are
actually
things.
help.
Yeah. I always think you're so good at it. You just make a list and you put it on the list and then you tick it off and do it. But of course, it's not quite. That's what I see.
No,
But it's
that's what
not
you see from
maybe
the
what.
outside.
Yeah.
But of course, there has to be some level of negotiation, and
Yeah,
we
for
all
all of
have to
us.
negotiate with ourselves about
Yes.
some things.
Yes.
Um, and
You're a
and the
good
other,
negotiator, maybe.
maybe I am. That was
Mm.
probably because I've got two boys.
And you have been disciplined enough to do a pharmacy degree, which is not it's not a fired up excitement degree, is it? In many ways, you've got to put in the stuff
You got
that
to put in the
gets you
hard
to
graft.
the yeah,
And
like a
and
lot
as
of
you know,
things.
actually, with any type of postgraduate health
Yes.
qualification as well, it's not always that
No,
exciting. It's just
no.
you've got to get it done.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's worth the hard work. And it's a bit like changing your lifestyle, actually. It's not always glamorous and exciting, and sometimes it's downright tedious and boring. But if you put in the hard work today, you will reap the benefits to tomorrow. And
And
I
you're
think
very good at
maybe
that.
it's
Yeah,
tipping that balance in your brain to
yeah.
say, this awful thing I've got to do is really worth the reward,
Yes.
and therefore
Okay.
I can do it.
It's
But
a
if it's not
it's
worth the reward, I mean, your car tax is not really worth the reward, is it? Because you're doing something you
no,
don't
I
want to
know
do.
that I'll do that tax. I might even do it a day late, by the way, but I
Oh my
will
goodness. Stop it.
I will. I know I'll do it. I'm just incredibly bored by it. So I
Yeah.
find I have to then have some serious incentive, like I'm going to get a fine, and then if I'm thinking about the fine, I think, is it worth it for that fine? I
I'm going to
watched
visit you
actually
in
one of
prison.
my offspring recently just pay the £100 for the self assessment thing because they couldn't be bothered to argue.
Oh.
Because anyway, you know what I mean, that sometimes for our chimps, maybe it's just worth saying, "Okay, all right, have the fine, I'm not spending any emotional energy on this."
Mm,
But,
mm.
I think and it makes your toes curl, I realize. Well, let's look at a few other factors, though.
Okay.
Um,
So perfectionism is
yes,
probably my biggest one.
yes,
And I'm starting to unpick that a little bit
yes,
myself because I
yes,
am a terrible perfectionist and I have
yes.
to learn to let it go. I
Okay.
have a friend who's not a perfectionist and I really wish I was like her.
Yes. Well,
Because
there are pluses and minuses of all
she
these
does her
things.
best and it's always really great, but she never beats herself up if she makes a problem. And
I'm
I just think,
very I'm
oh,
very similar, yeah. I like doing well at things I'm really interested in, but most things I'm very happy to pass, and
mm.
in whatever vein that is. And it's a huge plus because I don't dwell on the matter.
Yes. Well, see, this is the problem. I dwell on the matter, so this is the problem.
So even if you fine me £100 for getting that tax thing in
You'll
late,
just
I'll
pay the
just pay the
£100 and be
£100
happy.
and move on. Yeah,
Yeah. See, well, I would be
you'd
like,
be
"Oh,
mad.
no, I did something wrong. I've had
Yeah,
to pay the £100. What could I
interesting.
possibly have done differently?" I mean,
Very interesting.
I've got
Okay,
another
so
friend who tells me that I spend too much time in self-analysis.
well,
She
I
might have a
think
point.
I think health coaches probably sort of have to, because in a way, unless you sort out some self-awareness, it's very hard to help anybody else.
It
So
is.
if I
Yeah.
had to help you with health coaching from that point of view, I would have to be aware that how I operate, or my chimp operates, if you like to think of it like that, is different to your chimp. And
Yeah.
if you don't get that awareness, forget it, because I can only help people just like me. So I'd
Well, of
have to
course, yeah, and of
market
course,
I'd,
that's not
no,
true, but
I'd
it
have
would
to
be
market myself out there and say, if you look like this and you have the following characteristics, I'm going to be really helpful to you. But if you're anything else, I can't.
yes, and that would just not be very
So
helpful.
so we've both learnt probably a fair amount from each other over the years
Oh, yeah, yeah.
about what's actually normal. I mean, you think it's not normal to do your tax at midnight, but I sort of do. But between
Mm,
us, we have that amazing ability then to be self-aware.
understand.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that's what it is, and it comes to understanding. So the wonderful thing about health coaching, in my opinion, is that you're let
Yeah.
into lots of people's lives and lots of people's perspectives, and then you
Yes.
realise,
Yes.
"Ooh,
Yeah, there is
okay,
another way to look at
there
this.
is another way to look
Yes.
at this." Okay, so that's perfectionism, which
Yeah.
is rubbish sometimes, but helpful in other ways.
I admire it, and I think I often am jealous of it, because I know that you will always set out to do things really well, whereas I
Mm,
quite often just, jump the hurdle and get on. But of
mm,
course, we know, there's good bits to both of those ways of doing things. And
mm.
by the way, the fact that my chimp isn't that bothered about standards. It's a bit skittish. It just loves the gratification. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I like my chimp, but it probably makes me slightly more vulnerable, by the way, to other habits
Yeah,
that wouldn't interest you. So my chimp quite likes bad habits, I think. And again, self awareness is everything.
okay.
Okay, next up.
Okay, next up, so we've got perfectionism,
Yep.
standards, then it's overwhelmed
Yes.
and unorganized, and so everything is a bit too much to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people suffer from that with
Yes.
changing their health because actually the problem
Yes.
feels
It's so big.
gigantic.
Yes.
Gigantuous?
Was
I
yeah.
don't know, big
Yeah.
word. Big problem,
Yeah.
far too complex to
Yeah.
be
Can't
solved
do
by a
it.
little change.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if we've learnt nothing else in these years of doing health coaching together, it's that. And
Mm.
that's our real mantra, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
serenity.
small steps. So my
Yeah.
dad was is full of wisdom because dads are,
Yeah.
and also he just happens to be quite a wise man.
Yeah.
Um, when I was younger and I got overwhelmed by
Yes.
big projects, he used to
Yes.
say to me, "How do you eat an elephant?" And I'd
Uh,
"What are you talking about?"
yeah.
He said, "Well,
Yeah.
an elephant is huge. You can only eat one chunk at a time." And he was so right. And that kind
Yes.
of laid the foundations for everything that we do because,
Yeah.
if you've got a really big project to do at work, for
Yeah.
example, or you have to write a dissertation or it looks
Yes.
huge
Oh, and it's so overwhelming.
and it is overwhelming. And of
So you
course
do
you can
nothing.
see why you wouldn't do anything because it's
Yeah,
just too hard.
yeah,
But actually, if you um, take a small part and break
yes,
it down and do a little
yes.
thing, it leads to
And
much better.
and we absolutely know anecdotally that that
That can be
works.
done.
And
Yeah.
if we can convince somebody, but people like me, my chimp likes that big gratification idea.
Yeah.
So we're more vulnerable in a way to saying, no, no, I'm not doing the small thing. I'm going to change my whole life tomorrow.
Yes.
And so I'm going to do a new meal plan, exercise plan, and then I'm going to go to these mindfulness classes and blah, blah.
And that's too
And
much.
and
Too
then
much to take
3
on all at
weeks
once.
later, we're sailing along as we sailed before because we've completely overwhelmed by making all those changes, whereas you're much more likely to have taken that long view, or your
Mm,
chimp has, and said, "Actually, I'll just change my breakfast." And I think that's a thing to, be aware of in health coaching, is that some people really want, which is why people buy programs that promise
of
them
course,
that
because actually
gratification. Yeah.
it's overwhelming to do it by themselves. So buying the
Yeah.
program means that somebody else has worked it out for them, and all they have
Yes.
to do is follow that to a T and it will work. And I
Yeah.
get that because actually that's a bit like a deadline thing, isn't it? So
It
you've
is.
got a project, say you've got that
Yes.
dissertation to do.
Yes.
If your professor says, um, by this point in the year, I want you to do all your research and submit all your papers,
Yes.
that's kind of enabling you with a timeline, a deadline to
Yeah.
work towards to get those chunks done. And so many of us work better when somebody
Yes.
helps us to do that.
Yes.
The problem with the programs is that unfortunately they don't give the right kind of support. But that is, I think that's what people are yearning for, is that kind of, you know, help,
Yeah.
organizational help, um, really
Yes.
discipline
Yes.
maybe, to help.
Like a cheerleader, really. I mean, you're giving someone external, extrinsic
Validation.
value. Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
for some of our chimps, that's really useful.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think when you have a big project and you tell people to start small, it can lead sometimes to them thinking that they haven't actually done anything.
mm,
But
because they
what
want the big
because they want the big thing.
gratification.
But
Yeah.
recently I started using a reflection tool to get people to look back. So at certain chunks in their progress, I'd say, okay, so can you rate me where you are in this today
Yes.
and rate me where you were when you started? And
Yes.
then they
That
suddenly go,
helps.
oh my
Oh yeah.
goodness, I've made so many changes and I didn't even realize it. And then I think,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
see?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm absolutely agree that for me, I have to be careful that I see that bigger picture and start the small. And I know it works for me because it has worked in the past, but
Yeah.
it doesn't excite me in the same way. My chimp's like less excited about the small bite.
Mm,
Okay,
mm.
so that's something to be aware of when we're looking at people that procrastinate change, because it just looks so easy from the outside, doesn't it? We
Well,
think,
it always
can't we
does when you
just
read the
do this?
testimonial. I mean, the testimonial is designed to get you in the door, isn't it? So it's not going to tell you about the time when you
Yeah,
were crying in the dark corner because you couldn't do it all or you felt
yeah,
failure.
yeah.
That doesn't sell programs. So,
No, it's the
yeah,
testimonials that say, just join this program and this will be you. And that
all
we love
sorted.
that. Our chimps love that, don't they?
Of course they
It's
do.
dead easy. Okay. What about emotional and psychological factors?
Mm. So I think, yes, sometimes they're like a coping mechanism.
Mm.
Um, and that can
There's
be challenging
underlying,
because that can be
yeah,
the default. And we've spoken before, haven't we, about how much easier it is to take the negative route than the positive one.
yeah.
Um, I actually think that we know that my default setting is more negative than positive.
It is.
However, I'm much more positive than negative with other people. So that's something that I need to learn from myself. I mean, somebody
Yeah,
actually said to me
yeah.
this week, they wrote me a message to say,
Mm.
thank you so much. You always seem to be so positive and be able to put a
Yes,
positive spin on everything. And it
yes.
really is a skill. And I thought,
Yeah, but
that's
why don't I
incredible.
use it with myself?
Yes. Quite.
That's really interesting. And because I think my brain is a bit neurodiverse, if you want to call it that,
Yeah.
I've got a very excitable chimp in there.
Mm,
And but the psychological effects of things like anxiety and depression
have a
I
big
suspect
impact.
definitely come out in procrastination. It's
Mm,
complicated, but I suspect if you're feeling very negative, it's quite hard
it's quite
to
hard to push
excite
through.
yourself to do something for you as well, because you
Mm,
don't deserve it somehow, do you? In that
isn't that
negative sort of
yeah,
vein. Okay.
yeah. Okay, and then there's decision fatigue, and I think
Oh, yes.
we all struggle with that one. I think maybe that's the one of the other issues I find with the modern world is there is
Yes.
so many decisions to make.
Yes. I
And
agree.
technology, in a way, has exacerbated this because it's made everything more complex.
Yeah.
And actually, if you end up having to make millions and millions of tiny decisions every single day, that's exhausting. And then
Yeah.
if you make decisions for other people, because quite a lot of us have to do that,
Yes. Yes.
in a caring role, perhaps for
Yep.
children, for older parents, all
Yep.
of those kind of things, it's exhausting.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. So we don't think about that, but you might start to procrastinate. I see it in things like renovations where you have to
Mm.
continually decide on the light fittings and the switches, and then someone asks you about the taps, and you think, I just can't do this. I
Yes, and
can't.
also it sometimes you've had a thought about how you want things to be,
Yeah, but
but
you don't know how to get there.
you can't get there, but B, something happens in the middle that changes and it means you cannot achieve that thing. So,
Okay,
if you're
yeah,
thinking about a
then you can't
kitchen,
do
for
it at all.
example,
Yeah,
you've had in your head you want
yeah,
this glorious, beautiful Belfast sink with a
yes,
lovely brass mixer tap, right?
yeah, yeah,
And that's what you want. That's what your
yeah.
heart's been set on. That's why you decided to do the kitchen renovation in the first place.
Yes, just
But
that.
then the
Yeah,
plumber comes and
yeah. It
says, "You
says
can't
no, we
have
can't do
that
that.
because your plumbing system isn't up to scratch. You can't have
Oh,
this."
yes.
And
Okay.
then what do
You're
you
not going to
do?
do it at all. Yeah,
Exactly. And
yeah,
then it knocks your confidence. And it's the same in lifestyle change. You want
yeah,
something, but
yeah.
actually, somewhere along the line, someone says to you, "I'm really sorry, but
This is not
it's
achievable.
not achievable for
Yeah.
you." And then that knocks your confidence, takes the
Yes.
winds out of your sails, and then you're gone.
Don't we see that in
Mm.
weight loss so often, where
Mm.
people want to look like they looked at 15 or 20 or 25,
Mm.
but they're
It's not
now
achievable for
50?
everyone. It's just
Yeah.
not. And
Okay.
so I think it's a change in mindset, and that is an incredibly hard thing to do because your expectation is not matching up to reality,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
disconnect
And
between those two is
yeah.
too great for you
Yes.
to allow, and
And
then you have to
perfectionists might find it more difficult, that disconnect, than maybe someone like me who is less,
standards orientated.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
We're
yeah, less
not in the same,
exacting.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, and I
So
think
that's the plus of being the less exacting.
mm, mm,
That you cope probably better with that gap
mm.
between expectation and reality.
God, it's fascinating all this stuff,
Isn't
isn't it?
it fascinating?
Mm.
Anyway, to sum up,
Yeah.
procrastination isn't simple.
No.
It isn't just about laziness, and I'm pleased about that, although I do
Well, yeah,
feel
you're
quite
not lazy,
lazy.
Marianne, at all.
I know. I do feel quite lazy. Um,
You're retired.
I know.
Well, you're not
and
really,
I'm
but
and I'm doing it for all those chimpy passionate reasons. That's why I like my chimp. I mean, if
mm.
my chimp wasn't passionate, I wouldn't be doing this at all. I'd be on the beach with a book,
Will you be in the Bahamas?
Well, I'd
Obviously.
have no, to me, it means I'd have lost so much of my purpose in life. So I'm
Mm,
pleased with my chimp. It really does jump up and down with excitement at lots of things that come past me.
mm.
And so use your chimp to its
Full
best
potential.
advantage, because
Yeah.
each of those chimps that are unique to us, they are
Yeah.
different. They pluses
I
and
think
minuses.
maybe what we've learnt is that
Yeah.
there will be pluses and minuses to your
Yes.
chimp and your
Yes.
personality. And the important thing is to embrace the things that are so
Yes.
wonderful about you because they
Yes.
make you you, and
Exactly.
love you yourself for the things that
Yes.
you've got. I
Yes.
mean, I know, for example, that my perfectionism, ticking it all off the list, getting it done, life admin
Yeah.
approach is incredibly helpful for my life.
Oh,
So I have
golly,
to love
yes.
myself for
Yes.
being
Absolutely. I'm really
efficient
jealous
enough.
of that.
Yeah.
Yes. Always
And I
remember
know that my
that.
husband is very happy about that because it means he
Yes.
doesn't have to think about
Yes,
it.
he's probably a
So,
bit like me, but yeah, he loves the fact that I mean, you are so good at many things, but we're all good at things.
of
It's
course we
just
are.
finding that thing, and then responding differently, maybe with an awareness to the things you're not so good at, so you don't get
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
Mm. And then, taking it small bites because
Yeah, small
nobody,
bites.
no
Yeah.
matter what their testimonial says, can do this overnight. It simply isn't possible. So let
Yeah.
yourself off that hook. It's a big one and it's not going to do you any favors.
And keep your brain, if it's my chimp, you see, I have to keep that chimp on that small bite and use it
The
as that
carrot.
sort of, yeah, the carrot, because I know from experience my chimp likes the big one, but
Mm,
mostly fails that way. And the only changes I've made sustainably, particularly around health, but probably in other areas of my life, are when I've said to the chimp, look, this is the next marshmallow, and you can't have the big one yet.
mm.
But if we add up all the marshmallows, we're going
You
to
get a
get the big
giant
one.
marshmallow.
Yeah, I like a marshmallow.
That, we've had a
What to
couple of
say to
barbecues because
that?
the weather's
Yeah,
been so nice, right?
yeah,
Because, this might be our only chance of summer.
yeah.
And I thought, oh, I could make some marshmallows. And then we
Did
could
you
toast
know,
them.
golly?
Have you ever made marshmallows?
No, it looks really exciting on YouTube.
Yeah, it's really
I've never
easy.
tried it.
Oh, it's really easy.
Have you?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah.
Did you make food coloring in it, or did you do white?
I did white ones, but then I put flavours in them. Like chopped
Ah,
nuts,
how
rose
nice.
water, pistachios.
With boys.
No, before the boys were born.
Oh, before the boys were born, golly.
And I did say to them that I haven't done any for age. I mean, I've made marshmallow fluff
It's
with
quite
them.
magic, isn't it?
It is magic.
Yeah.
I do love it. Anyway, it's like meringues. You know me and I've got to make meringue actually. That's a reminder.
Meringues. So there's a good ending for a health coaching podcast.
Sugar-based desserts.
Yeah, sugar-based treats for health coaches. Anyway,
Look, it's
till
Easter
next time.
and it's all about balance, Mary-Anne.
Yes, it is. It's what my chimp likes. He likes a bit of sugar, I have to say. Anyway, till next time.
Cool. Have
See you
a
soon.
wonderful week and I'll see you next
Yes.
time.
See you next time. Bye
Bye
for
bye.
now.